Bradley Pierce stood on that stage like he owned it. 2,000 people in the audience, bright lights, his name in bold letters on the screen behind him. CEO, Brightload Technologies. Revolutionizing adaptive logistics. I was sitting 5 rows back, arms crossed, watching this guy crash and burn in real time. And I was enjoying every second of it. His opening was polished enough. Generic stuff about pushing boundaries, redefining efficiency, leveraging data for smarter freight solutions. You could have swapped him with any TEDx speaker, and no one would have noticed the difference. But then came the Q&A. That's when things got interesting. First question from the front row. Can you walk us through the real-time decision logic in your predictive routing layer? Bradley smiled that fake CEO smile. That's built into our proprietary system, but at a high level, it uses feedback loops to dynamically adjust based on congestion signals. I almost laughed. That was my work he was butchering, and he didn't even understand the basics. Second question. Which statistical model handles the uncertainty layer? Bayesian inference? Monte Carlo? He blinked. It's a hybrid model, a bit of everything. We believe in flexibility. People started shifting in their seats. You could feel the room getting uncomfortable. Third question from a woman with a Stanford badge. I looked at your white paper. One of the routing graphs you showed? Those weight distributions are mathematically impossible. The load balance doesn't converge. Bradley chuckled nervously. Well, I guess impossible depends on perspective. That's when the murmur started. A guy behind me whispered, "He's dodging." Someone else said, "He's cooked." You want to know how we got here? It's been 18 years in the making. 18 years of watching Bradley take credit for my work. 18 years of him standing in front of boards, investors, conferences, talking about systems he couldn't even spell correctly. Every time he grabbed that laser pointer, that was my code running in the background. My models, my logic, my late nights. I'm Derek Hoffman. I'm 52 years old, and I've been writing code since before the internet was commercial. I hold 7 patents in distributed systems. I was on the committee that wrote the RFC for distributed load balancing. At my level, you don't just write programs. You architect ecosystems. Bradley, he's a suit with a loud voice. Always has been. See, at 52, you've got different priorities than when you're 30. I'd been through 2 layoffs, 3 company mergers, and the dot-com crash. My 401k took a beating in '08, and we're still recovering. Karen's expecting our first grandkid next month, and with Tommy finishing up his senior year at Northwestern, every decision carries weight. College isn't cheap, and neither is healthcare at my age. When you're my age, you don't just change jobs. You calculate every move like it's your last, because it might be. The breaking point came 11 months ago at our company retreat in Lake Geneva. One of those fancy lodge events with white tablecloths and an open bar where executives pat each other on the back for work they never did. I wasn't supposed to be in the conference room that afternoon. I came back early from lunch to grab my phone charger, and that's when I heard Bradley presenting to the board. The real breakthrough, he was saying, tapping his slide with that damn pointer, was the adaptive load balancing framework. That's what let us handle the seasonal volume spikes across distribution hubs. I designed it to account for weight variance, route priority, and weather delay risk. It was a grind, but worth it. I froze in the doorway. That wasn't just a lie. That was my work. My exact model. I'd spent 11 months developing it, testing it, breaking it, rebuilding it from scratch. Hell, I'd had to draw Bradley a flowchart once just to explain what a constraint relaxation loop was. I backed out of the room without making a sound. That night, sitting in my hotel room, I made a decision. I started a folder on my personal cloud. No labels, no tags, just a random string of characters as the name. Inside it, I started dropping everything. Screenshots of system dashboards with my user handle. Commit logs from our Git repo with my initials next to every build. Emails where Bradley asked me to simplify explanations so he could present them better. Voice memos I'd recorded during late-night work sessions, talking through model logic out loud while coding. Time-stamped documents, drafts, revisions, tests, every piece of proof that it was mine. From that point on, every time Bradley asked me to explain something one more time, I logged it. I made notes. I built timelines for every feature I created that he pitched as his own. Was it obsessive? Yeah, probably. But I wasn't going to be the silent guy in the background while he collected praise for something he couldn't build if his life depended on it. Young guys panic when they get screwed over. Guys my age, we plan. A couple weeks after that retreat, I started digging through our internal HR policies. Buried in the employee agreement was a line about intellectual property. Anything developed outside work hours using non-company equipment could be classified as personal research. That gave me an idea. I rewrote part of our policy document under the section about independent innovation. Worded it clean, professional, no red flags, just enough to carve out protection for personally funded research contributions. I ran it past Bradley one afternoon, told him it was a legal formality to update our compliance with vendor contracts. He didn't even read it. Just signed the digital approval and moved on to his next meeting. That was the moment I knew he saw me as harmless, a background tech guy, a glorified IT support with no spine. He'd never imagined I could gut his entire reputation from the inside out. He was wrong. 2 days later, I encrypted that folder and backed it up to 3 separate locations. 2 cloud services and a physical drive I kept at home in a locked case. I didn't plan to use it right away. I wanted it ready, clean, ironclad. Every time Bradley walked into a meeting after that, bragging about his strategy or his methodology, I didn't say a word. I just watched, listened, and documented. I had time, I could wait, and he was digging his own grave deeper every day. The second part of my plan started taking shape when I was at a supply chain tech expo in Nashville. Company sent me there to man our booth while Bradley worked the investor crowd. I was basically a prop, standing there in my Brightload polo while he talked nonsense to people with checkbooks. I took a break, walked the floor, tried to clear my head. That's when I ran into Lisa Coleman, head of development at Nexus Dynamics, our biggest competitor and the only team whose software had ever come close to matching ours. She recognized me first. "You're Derek Hoffman, right?" she said. "I've been trying to figure out who actually builds the stuff your company keeps hyping." She wasn't smiling when she said it, just stood there, arms crossed, studying me like I was a puzzle she needed to solve. "I build most of it," I told her. "Most of it? 98%? Bradley puts his name on it. That made her smile. We talked for 20 minutes by the coffee station. Real tech talk, not the buzzword nonsense Bradley loved to throw around. I mentioned a few feature quirks in our routing model that only the actual architect would know. The kind of details you only learn when you've lived inside that code for months. Lisa didn't ask for files or documentation. She didn't need to. When you've been in this business as long as we have, you can spot real expertise from a mile away. A week later, she emailed me, said she was heading back to Milwaukee the next day and wanted to grab coffee if I was around. We met at a diner off I-94. No suits, no laptops, just 2 people who spoke the same language for once. I didn't show her any proprietary code or leak client information, but I gave her enough design philosophy and infrastructure insight that she knew I was the real deal. By the end of that meeting, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "If you ever want to build something that actually matters, come talk to me." I didn't take it lightly. At 52, with a family depending on me, you don't make career moves on impulse. That night, I pulled out all my legal documents and read every line twice. No non-compete clause. No IP restrictions that would hold up in court, especially with that new language I'd slipped into the policy document. Just to be sure, I met with Patricia Walsh 3 days later. She's been practicing corporate law longer than I've been coding, and she's seen every trick in the book. She went through my situation word by word and gave me the green light. "You're clean," she told me. "And if they try to challenge you, we'll bury them in documentation." That's when I really started preparing. I moved all my evidence offline, cleaned up metadata, organized everything by date and project. I wrote detailed development notes for each core system, documenting what I'd built during company time versus what I'd created on my own hours using my own equipment. I even had screenshots of Slack messages where Bradley would ping me 5 minutes before major presentations, asking for quick talking points about systems he was supposed to have designed. The man had no shame. 2 months later, Lisa called again. "We're offering you CTO," she said without preamble. "Full build authority, your own team, real ownership of what you create. And Derek, the salary is $190,000 base plus equity." At 52, with my experience and track record, I should have been making $250,000 minimum, but this wasn't just about money. It was about respect, about finally working somewhere that valued substance over presentation. I said yes. I didn't announce it right away. Played it cool, kept showing up at Brightload, kept doing my job. Even helped Bradley prep for a webinar about adaptive logistics innovation. The irony wasn't lost on me. Meanwhile, I worked nights and weekends setting everything up. Contract negotiations, move logistics, onboarding with Nexus's legal team. Every detail planned and documented. 3 months later, I was ready. I walked into Bradley's office on a Tuesday morning with a cardboard box in one hand and a manila folder in the other. Didn't say a word at first. Just dropped the box by his guest chair, set the folder on his desk, and looked him in the eye. 18 years of loyalty. 18 years of making him look good while he took all the credit. And now I was done. Bradley leaned back in his leather chair, grinning like I'd just brought him coffee. He flipped open the folder, scanned the first page of my resignation letter, and actually laughed. "You're serious?" he said. "Good luck finding another job at your age in this field." "You're 52, Derek." He leaned forward like he was sharing wisdom. "This industry chews up guys like you after 50. You really want to start over now?" That smug bastard. He thought he was delivering some devastating truth, but all I heard was desperation. He knew exactly what walking out that door meant for him. I stayed calm. "I've got copies of everything," I said. "Every system I built, every model I created, every test I documented. All backed up, all time-stamped, and I've got records showing you never touched a single line of it." His smile faded half an inch. "Excuse me? You heard me. 18 years of standing on my work, and I've got email threads, Git commits, internal memos proving it. You're a suit with a loud voice, Bradley. That's all you've ever been." He pushed the folder aside like it was radioactive. "You're bluffing." I grabbed the folder and tucked it under my arm. "At 52, Bradley, I don't bluff. I don't have time for games. But I guarantee you that by the time I walk out of this office, I'll already be worth more than you." His jaw went tight. No clever comeback this time. Just silence. I picked up my box and headed for the door. Didn't look back. Didn't wait for some dramatic parting shot. The door clicked shut behind me, and that was it. 18 years over. I didn't go home right away. Just sat in my truck in the parking lot for a few minutes, engine off, watching people come and go. My hands were steady, but I could feel the adrenaline humming under the surface. Not nerves, pure controlled satisfaction. That moment had been building for months, and now it was done. Clean, professional, and completely devastating. I drove straight to Nexus's headquarters in Milwaukee, picked up my new badge from security, took the elevator to the 8th floor, and walked into a real job with real leadership. My team was waiting. 14 engineers, 2 data scientists, a project lead, and a UX specialist who actually understood user experience wasn't just about pretty colors. These weren't just employees. They were colleagues. People who looked at me and saw expertise, not just a convenient scapegoat for their boss's ego. For the first time in years, I wasn't just coding. I was building. And Bradley? He was still living in his fantasy world. The day I left, he posted some garbage on LinkedIn about how strong organizations don't panic when people come and go, and how true leaders adapt and evolve. Classic Bradley. Always performing, even when the theater was empty. 5 days later, he was sharing Harvard Business Review articles about resilience and posting Steve Jobs quotes like he was auditioning for Motivational Speaker of the Year. But by week 2, reality started creeping in. First, it was small things. Error logs showing routing delays. Minor glitches in the load balancing system. One distribution hub reported packages getting sent the long way around for no apparent reason. Then came the questions in his LinkedIn comments. Real technical questions from people who actually understood the systems he'd been taking credit for. How does your team handle resource throttling across regional nodes? What's your response protocol for real-time route failures? Is the adaptive model rule-based or machine learning? Bradley didn't answer any of them. Just kept posting those motivational quotes and industry think pieces. Vision over visibility and other meaningless corporate nonsense. By week 3, the silence was getting loud. Someone from inside the company reached out to me privately, said their senior developer had quit 2 days after I left. Another guy was trying to reverse engineer my main dispatcher module and couldn't figure out where to start. They wanted to know if I'd left behind any documentation. I hadn't. Not because I was trying to sabotage anyone, but because Bradley had never asked for it. He'd assumed he could just plug in another warm body and keep the machine running. That's not how real architecture works. The systems I'd built had layers, hyper-specific logic tied to customer behavior patterns, shipping lane optimization, vendor response algorithms. You couldn't just Google your way through it. You had to understand it from the ground up, and that took time Bradley didn't have. By week 4, the clients started noticing. Big clients. The kind with 7-figure contracts and zero patience for excuses. One Fortune 100 company sent a formal complaint about performance downgrades and missed delivery thresholds. Their automated routing was failing, packages were getting stuck in loops, and their tracking system was showing phantom locations. Another client called asking why their delivery windows had doubled overnight and why their priority shipments were being treated like standard freight. Bradley's support team blamed it on routine system maintenance and minor calibrations. The clients weren't buying it. That same week, Bradley posted a photo of himself on some hiking trail with the caption, Leadership means staying calm at the summit while the wind howls. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Meanwhile, at Nexus, we were hitting every milestone ahead of schedule. My team had crushed our first sprint, and we'd rolled out a core feature that optimized last-mile delivery by 11%. 11% might not sound like much, but in logistics, that's the difference between profit and bankruptcy. I was finally doing the work I wanted to do. Real architecture, real problem solving, not just maintaining someone else's house of cards while they took all the credit. The next week, I heard through the grapevine that Bradley had called an all-hands technical meeting to rally the troops and address the temporary challenges. Half the engineering team didn't show up. The other half spent the entire meeting asking questions he couldn't answer. Someone apparently asked if they could get access to Derek's version of the workflow documentation. Bradley ended the meeting early. Another engineer reached out to me privately, not asking for help, but just to say thanks. Seeing me walk away had given him the courage to start job hunting too. He'd already lined up 3 interviews. That's the thing about toxic leadership. Once people see it's possible to leave, the exodus starts. Bradley had spent years thinking his people needed him, when the truth was exactly the opposite. But I wasn't done with him yet. The Global Optimization Forum was coming up in Chicago, biggest industry conference of the year, and Bradley was scheduled as the opening keynote speaker. Same conference where he'd been presenting my work for the past 5 years. This year was going to be different. Lisa and I drove down together. Nexus had bought a premium sponsorship package, which meant front row seats and booth space right in the main exhibition hall. Perfect positioning for what I had planned. Bradley took the stage right on schedule. 2,000 people in the audience, industry press, live stream cameras, the works. His name up in lights, CEO, Brightload Technologies. Revolutionizing adaptive logistics. He opened with his usual routine. Buzzwords about innovation and transformation. Generic slides about market disruption and competitive advantages. Pure performance art. But then came the Q&A, and that's when I knew he was cooked. The questions started simple enough, but each one was more technical than the last. And Bradley's answers got vaguer and more evasive with every response. Can you walk us through the decision logic in your predictive routing layer? That's built into our proprietary system, but it uses dynamic feedback to adjust for congestion patterns. Translation: I have no idea. Which statistical framework handles your uncertainty modeling? Bayesian? Monte Carlo? We use a hybrid approach. Flexible methodology based on real-world conditions. Translation: I'm making this up as I go. The Stanford professor in the 3rd row was the one who finally called him out. I reviewed your published white paper, she said. The weight distribution graphs you showed are mathematically impossible. The load balancing algorithms don't converge under the constraints you've specified. Bradley's smile flickered. Well, impossible is a matter of perspective and breakthrough innovation. That's when the murmur started. You could feel the room shifting, people looking at each other, whispering. He was losing them in real time. Lisa stood up from her seat in the middle section. Actually, she said, her voice cutting through the noise, I think our CTO can explain the models Mr. Pierce is referencing. Every head in that auditorium turned toward me. Bradley went white, pure sheet white, like he'd just seen his career walk into the room. I stood up slowly, straightened my jacket, and walked down the aisle toward the stage. 2,000 people watching, cameras rolling, industry press taking notes. I didn't rush, didn't look back at Bradley, didn't even acknowledge the applause that was starting to build. I just walked up those steps and took the microphone. Let's clear a few things up, I said. The room went dead quiet. The models Mr. Pierce just tried to explain use reinforcement learning wrapped in a Markov decision framework. The weight distributions that Professor Martinez mentioned. They converge perfectly when you account for temporal variance and historical route optimization, assuming your system is actually built to learn from both. Nods started rippling through the audience. People pulling out phones, taking notes. The optimization layer breaks down into 3 distinct processing paths: reactive, predictive, and adaptive. Most systems fail because they try to blend these approaches without defining clear boundaries. Our architecture handles each one separately and manages cross-layer communication through standardized APIs. I looked out at the crowd. That's how you prevent the kind of performance degradation that's been plaguing Brightload for the past month. Low laughter moved through the room. Bradley was still standing at the side of the stage, looking like he wanted to disappear. I wasn't done. I've been architecting distributed systems since before most of you were writing code, I said. I hold 7 patents in logistics optimization. I was on the standards committee that defined the RFC protocols we all use today. Real innovation isn't about flashy presentations or clever marketing. It's about understanding data flow at the fundamental level. The applause started before I finished the sentence. Not polite conference clapping. Real appreciation from people who recognized expertise when they heard it. I handed the mic back to the moderator and walked off stage. Clean, professional, devastating. Bradley didn't try to follow up. Didn't attempt some damage control or witty comeback. He just stood there while the session ended and people filed out, many of them stopping to shake my hand or ask for business cards. The media found me before I made it back to my seat. Cameras, microphones, reporters from trade publications and tech blogs. The first question came from a woman with a TechCrunch badge. So why was Bradley Pierce presenting your work for 18 years? I looked right at her and said, "You'll have to ask him." That was it, one sentence. But it was enough. They tried to corner Bradley at the side exit, but he wasn't talking. Just threw his hands up and muttered something about collaboration and team efforts before disappearing into the crowd. The hashtag was trending within an hour. Hashtag Pierce exposed. By that evening, Nexus's PR team had issued a statement confirming that I was the original architect behind all the core logistics frameworks currently used by Brightload Technologies. Dates, patents, development timelines. All public record. The tech blogs picked it up immediately. CTO breaks silence. Brightload's secret architect speaks out. The real brain behind adaptive logistics. Industry veteran exposes years of credit theft. Bradley tried to go dark. No statements, no interviews, social media went quiet. But his investors were asking questions. Why didn't their CEO have any actual development experience? Why was the company hemorrhaging engineers? Why was their most valuable intellectual property tied to someone who'd been gone for months? Bradley didn't have answers. He'd never needed them before. By Friday, it was over. Brightload issued a press release at 6:15 p.m., buried in the weekend news cycle like they were announcing a minor personnel change instead of a complete organizational collapse. Bradley Pierce will be stepping down from his role as CEO, effective immediately. The board of directors thanks him for his contributions and wishes him well in future endeavors. No golden parachute mentioned. No transition period. No pursuing other opportunities. Just a corporate death sentence wrapped in polite language. My phone exploded with messages. People I hadn't talked to in years, executives from across the industry, engineers I'd worked with at previous companies. Most of them sent the same basic message. He's done. I didn't gloat. Didn't post some victory lap on social media or send passive-aggressive updates about new beginnings. I just forwarded the press release to my team at Nexus with a simple note. Truth wins. Then I closed my laptop and went home to Karen. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, and she took one look at my face and said, "It's over, isn't it? It's over." She hugged me right there by the refrigerator, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could actually breathe. Monday brought the lawyers. Brightload's legal team filed challenges to every patent I held, claiming they were developed under corporate direction and demanding joint ownership. They wanted to claw back anything that might salvage their sinking ship. I expected it. Hell, I would have done the same thing if I were them. But they didn't have what I had. 18 years of meticulous documentation, time-stamped commits, email threads, work logs, voice recordings. Proof that the critical innovations had been developed on my own time, using my own equipment, under the policy language I'd gotten Bradley to approve. Patricia Walsh didn't even blink when I showed her their filing. "They're fishing," she said. "Let's show them what real preparation looks like." Nexus's legal team hit back hard. Cease and desist orders, counter-filings, formal patent reassignment requests. We buried them in documentation so comprehensive that their own lawyers probably advised them to settle, which they did. 7 figures, paid out in installments over 8 months. Not because they were feeling generous, but because fighting would have cost them twice as much and they'd have lost anyway. The final settlement document was a thing of beauty. D. Hoffman, listed inventor on all disputed patents. Sole contributor. 8 technologies total. My name, my work. Finally, Bradley could have dragged it out, made a public fight of it, tried to salvage something from the wreckage. But he didn't. I think even he knew when he was beaten. His board dissolved half their client contracts within 3 weeks. Major accounts pulled out, citing performance issues and leadership concerns. Vendors started demanding payment up front. The talent exodus turned into a stampede. One industry publication ran a feature calling Brightload a cautionary tale of innovation theft in the modern tech economy. The stock price hit penny territory by the end of the quarter. I should have felt vindicated. Should have been celebrating the complete destruction of the man who'd stolen 18 years of my career. But I was too busy building. We rolled out Nexus's new platform that same month. Early performance metrics were outstanding. Error rates down, efficiency up, client satisfaction through the roof. Fortune 500 companies were calling us directly, wanting to know about migration timelines. My team was functioning like a machine. Real collaboration, actual expertise, people who understood that good architecture takes time and patience and a willingness to rebuild things until they work right. For the first time since I'd started my career, I was working with people instead of for someone. Then one morning I found an envelope on my desk. No postmark, no return address, just my name written in blue ink. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten. I took credit for your genius and convinced myself I deserved it. You were always the real builder. I was just standing in your light. No signature, but I recognized Bradley's handwriting. I sat there staring at that letter for maybe 30 seconds. Didn't feel angry, didn't feel satisfied, just tired. Like I'd been carrying something heavy for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to set it down. I folded the letter, dropped it in my desk drawer, and got back to work. 6 months later, I was backstage at the same conference where Bradley had imploded. But this time the introduction was different. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Derek Hoffman, Chief Technology Officer of Nexus Dynamics and architect of the industry's most advanced freight optimization platform. Not just a title, not just a name, recognition for what I'd actually built. I walked out to real applause. Not polite conference clapping, but respect from people who understood what I'd accomplished. The lights came up, I grabbed the mic and pulled up my first slide. Real solutions for real systems. No corporate logo, no buzzwords, just the work. I walked them through our new platform, piece by piece, showed them the architecture, explained the decision trees, demonstrated the optimization algorithms with actual performance data. Numbers, graphs, measurable results. I didn't need to oversell it or dress it up with fancy presentations. The work spoke for itself. When I hit the final slide, the room was dead quiet. You could feel the attention, the engagement, 2,000 people actually listening instead of just waiting for their turn to network. Then the questions started. Real questions. Technical questions. The kind that showed people understood not just what I'd built, but why it mattered. I answered every one. Not because I had to, but because I could. Because I'd lived inside every algorithm, debugged every edge case, optimized every process until it was as close to perfect as engineering allows. 20 minutes of Q&A, and I never hesitated once. The applause when I finished was different from what Bradley used to get. No polite obligation, no courtesy clapping. This was recognition, respect, people standing up because they genuinely appreciated what they'd just heard. I stepped off that stage and felt something I hadn't experienced in 18 years. I was visible, not as someone's employee or someone's ghostwriter or someone's convenient scapegoat. As myself, as the person who'd actually done the work. Lisa was waiting in the wings when I came off stage. How does it feel? She asked, like I can finally breathe. 3 more companies approached me that day. Job offers, consulting contracts, speaking opportunities. The kind of recognition that comes when people know who you really are instead of who they think you work for. I turned them all down. I was exactly where I wanted to be. That evening, I called Karen from my hotel room. How did it go? She asked. Perfect, I said. It was perfect. So what's next? I looked out the window at Chicago's skyline, light stretching out toward the lake, and thought about that question. At 52, you don't get many chances to reinvent yourself. Most guys my age are counting down toward retirement, playing it safe, trying not to make waves. But I'd spent the last year proving something important. That experience matters. That expertise trumps politics. That substance will always beat style, even if it takes time. What's next is we keep building, I told her. We keep doing the work. Some men spend their 50s wondering what if. I spent mine proving what is. And I'm not done yet.